Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Fearless Fridays on Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us again. So today I'm actually joined by another one of our amazing coaches, Carleigh, and we are going to be talking to you all about getting girls involved in STEM. Carleigh and I are both very passionate about this topic. I don't know if you can see my shirt, but I wore my strong female character shirt, especially for this. So yeah, Carleigh and I are huge proponents, or huge we're very much supportive of women in STEM. So I wanted to kind of come on, talk about why it's so important, give you some examples of some amazing students that continue to inspire us and make us become better women leaders and role models in STEM. But also just kind of give those of you watching some guidance on, if you have young girls at home, or you know a young girl, whether it's your niece or your cousin or your daughter or your students, just little things that you can do if you want to kind of encourage them to get in this field and help them kind of along the journey. So thanks for joining us, whether you are joining live or whether you are catching us on the replay. As always, if you have any questions or kind of want to chime in on the conversation, please feel free to add them in the comments below. As we go through our Fearless Fridays, I will also be posting some links in the comments too, so you can kind of browse them at your leisure. So let's get started. So what I wanted to start with is Carleigh and I, now being women in STEM, we're a little bit different than the types of women in STEM you hear of in the news and things like that, because we're not necessarily, working at NASA or like working in the STEM field. But as educators, we kind of are involved in kind of a different role, and our journeys to get to this point have been very different, because we come from different backgrounds. So Carleigh, if you want to share your journey first and kind of walk us through what your journey into STEM, or your life in STEM has looked like and felt like, and then I'll kind of talk about mine, and we'll see how they overlap and how they are different but the same at the same time. So. Okay,
well, mine basically started when I was young. I definitely was more towards math than I was English, especially at a very young age. But I think my STEM started when I had my science teachers in high school were very supportive of me. Like, I would prefer to go and hang out in the science lab than go outside and run around. And they allowed me to do that. So through exploring their belief in me kind of helped me grow strengths in that area. So I went and continued even into university when I did physics and math. Like, all the physics professors, when you had a problem, especially in the lab or anything like that, and you wanted to spend extra time in there, they were willing to give you that exploration, that let you learn. And I think that was a huge role of why I love STEM, because I'm very much of a hands-on person. So what's yours? What's your...
Excellent. So before I jump into mine, I just have a question for you because Carleigh is kind of, a scientist and very much into STEM. Like she just mentioned, she's into math and physics. She's studying math and physics, whereas I did not. Did you find when you were in that experience, so when you were going through your kind of university degree in that STEM subjects, did you find that there was like a huge gender gap, like it was mostly males compared to females? Or
believe it or not, in the beginning, yes.
Yeah.
Because I believe I started with about 20 to 25 students. Most of them were males. I would say easily 75% of that. But as I came on to my final years, it actually was split. So there was literally 3 girls who graduated in physics and math and 3 boys that graduated in physics and math.
That's good. That's good. Because traditionally, it seems that there's definitely a huge kind of gap of kind of, you know, males or people who identify as male and people who identify as female. So yeah, it's good to hear. They're definitely becoming more and more, more women in these kind of fields, and they've always been there. They just necessarily haven't had the same spotlight that men have, but good, glad to hear it. So my journey into the world of STEM is very, very different than Carleigh's. I actually, some of you may know, I actually come from an arts background. So my initial kind of background is in visual arts, it's in music, and environmental studies. So not the environmental science where you're like looking at the biology and kind of doing the science or more STEM-y part of it, but more of kind of the social studies side. So I'm very much on the kind of social studies, arts side of things. And I kind of entered the world of STEM as I was doing my teaching degree and kind of learning more about this and learning more about technology and seeing not only how it's important for us as a society, but also for children's education. And that's what kind of really brought me to the role that I'm in now. But I would say that like my journey kind of in STEM in general goes back a little bit further than that. So as a child, I was always very much a geek. I still am a geek. I love my video games. I love, you know, comic books and things like that. But my experience growing up was that as a girl, you weren't really allowed to like those things, or you weren't really allowed to talk about them. So I have vivid memories of, you know, being in grade 5 and a group of my classmates who were all guys standing in the back of the classroom talking about how awesome the latest episode of Dragon Ball Z was that last night. And I remember trying to kind of join in at that conversation and be like, yeah, I love Dragon Ball Z too. Like, it's my favorite show on TV right now. And just not getting a response and basically getting looks of like, oh, okay, you know, whatever, you know, why you like Dragon Ball Z, but you're a girl type of thing. And so for me, now that I'm older, it took me a very long time to kind of be comfortable with, you know, what I like and who I am exactly, and kind of being interested in these things. Like, I would say I probably was not, I didn't really own the fact that, you know, I was a woman in STEM or a woman who liked the sort of things that typically come up in STEM fields until I was about 21. So really until I graduated university. And most of my childhood, I kind of just lived in this bubble or hid it, even though it's such a huge, huge part of who I am. I hid it because it's one of those things that, you know, something that girls just didn't do or just didn't like. And so part of the reason why, you know, I wanted to talk about this Friday and discuss it is because I feel like many adult women also had experiences like I did, and many kids today are probably, I think it's getting better, but I think there are still some, there are some young women out there today who are still kind of feeling isolated or feeling ostracized just because of what they like, and I don't quite think that's right. So I mean, really, I think the biggest thing with getting girls involved in STEM, so kind of delving into it, is that idea of having a role model or having someone who is really encouraging you and encouraging, you know, the young women in your lives to be like, you know, who cares what other people think? Like, you like this, you are awesome at it, keep going with it, right? So like Carleigh, for you who have had those really strong role models, who have had people that help to encourage you to go into math and physics, I think seems like definitely really helped.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, whereas me, you know, I never have been a math and physics person, so I don't think if I had a strong role model, I would still go down that path. But I didn't necessarily have those people who were supportive. Like, my parents and my family obviously were very supportive, and, you know, are like, yeah, you like.
It's kind of both, right? Because you spend a lot of your life as a kid in school as well as at home, so you need the support from both.
Exactly, and like what you like.
Feel comfortable.
For sure.
In STEM, for sure.
For sure. And I think even too, just, you know, knowing about, and knowing other people who are into this stuff, or people throughout history who, you know, were interested in STEM or were women in STEM and are women in STEM, helps a lot too, because as a young woman or girl, you can really see yourself in that role. And so you're like, oh, hey, that person, you know, is into science. I'm really into science too. It doesn't make me weird. It doesn't make me different. It's, you know, if it makes me different, it's for a good reason. And that idea of that person's really cool, I want to be like them, can go a really long way. Even without you knowing it. So I wanted to also highlight a couple of young women in our programs and who we've kind of taught throughout the years who have actually inspired me to one, be, I guess, more confident in myself, even though, again, I've come a long way from when I was young, and who have just really inspired us to kind of not worry about some of these kind of inherent biases that tend to exist in the world, but really just, you know, put their foot down, like, this is what I like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm a woman in STEM or a young girl in STEM, and you got to deal with it kind of attitude. So we wanted to share some examples because they really are inspirational, and they really are the type of kids that I know we are really trying to help foster here at STEM Minds. So I'm going to let Carleigh give an example first of a young woman who is with us about 3 days a week in one of our programs. Super adorable, such a lovely, lovely child. But I won't say too much more. I'm going to let Carleigh speak to her a little bit and her amazingness.
I've only just met her like a couple of weeks ago, and what basically highlighted very big for me in the beginning was how curious she was, how inquisitive she was. She's very creative. She likes breaking things down into small little pieces and building it back together, or seeing how other pieces can fit with different pieces, especially with the build projects, that kind of thing, the different pieces, like a puzzle piece fitting with a gear, like how she put them together to make a car. Like, that's just awesome. She is really using her mind creatively, and then with STEM stuff supported by us. She's good. She's reminds a little bit of me, exploring different ways of things.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think she's a fantastic example of how, you know, arts and creativity isn't something that's isolated from the world of STEM either, right? STEM, especially to us here at STEM Minds, is something that's a little bit more encompassing. It's not, you know, straight science, technology, engineering, and math. It's the way that the world works, and it's more about, you know, how technology and how these ideas kind of interact with our world and make our world, or make our kind of day-to-day life what it is. And I think she's such a good example of how to, you know, how she highlights how that's the case. She's just an amazing kid, and has been very inspiring to Carleigh and I. She also has like such a cool independent sense of style too, that, you know, it's very great to see. So the one young woman that I wanted to highlight was actually from, I guess it would have been quite a few months ago. It was actually back at our old location before we even moved in here, and she had joined our Maker Science program. So we had a program where every week on Saturdays we would build like different projects. So the kids would come in and they'd build and kind of, you know, use the maker space and create new things and take them home with them. And she's super adorable, and she came in, you know, one day, and I was chatting with her and her mom, and I guess she was telling me about this lab coat that she had. So she's like, you know, oh, my favorite thing to wear is this lab coat. And so she had this little like jacket lab coaty type thing, but she's like, I just love to wear because, you know, I really love science and I really love STEM. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was talking to her mom, and she just turns and looks at me and said, I'm going to be a robotics engineer when I get older. And yeah, and she's about 6 years old. And the fact that she's just like, yeah, I like science, I'm going to be a robotics engineer. What are you going to do about it? I just absolutely loved. And I was like, if every kind of you know, if everyone had the confidence that she had and, you know, that attitude is going to take her far, especially in this sort of, you know, field in this kind of area of just,
but
you know.
I find that a lot of businesses too, like everything from production to even just an office admin, it's so technology based and STEM based that it's good to start developing an interest for these different things. And we're going into a different world where STEM is going to be very, very big.
Absolutely. And that's one of the big things. Really big. Yeah. And that's one of the big things that we highlight is, you know, again, STEM is not necessarily just having the skills to code or to, you know, have these technical skills, but it's really like the soft skills and the things that come with it. Yeah. So the things like the problem solving, exactly, the critical thinking, the creativity, it's the mindset, the thinking, the confidence that's really going to help, whether you're, I mean, male or female, but I think especially for young girls who are kind of trying to enter in this world that is a lot better than it used to be, but still has some challenges and biases related to it. So based on that, let's talk about some things that you as a viewer can do to help to encourage some of the young women in your life. We wrote a couple of blog posts about like books and kind of ways to inspire them that I will post in the comments so you can browse them at your leisure. But I think, again, one of the most important things you can do is show them, give them a role model. So whether it's yourself, whether it's us, whether it is, you know, amazing people who are out there in the world, like Carleigh Kloss, who is actually a supermodel, as most of you probably know, has a program that she started up in the United States, which is Coding with Klossy, I believe it's called. And so every summer she does some summer camps specifically for girls and getting them involved in technology and getting them involved into code because, you know, it's something that she feels is important too. And I think for those young women, seeing that, you know, I don't have to choose between being a supermodel or being involved in STEM, you know, I can be who I am and like what I like, is really important. And so we pulled a couple of books that we wanted to share with you as well, because sometimes even just reading a simple story and again, having that young woman be reflected in the stories that they're seeing and the things that, you know, the pictures that they're seeing, the stories that they're reading, the things they see on TV can really go a huge way. So one of our favorites here that we like to read with the younger kids is, see if I can lift that up, Hello Ruby, Adventures in Coding. So it stars a young girl named Ruby, and she actually goes through, there's a few different books now. I think there's a new one out in October as well. And she actually walks through kind of the computer. She learns how to code. She learns all about like sequencing and loops and things like that. So especially for really young girls, it's a really good book to just start to see them reflect. What we find at STEM Minds, and there have been kind of studies and things like that done on it before too, is that if you don't kind of work on breaking down those barriers, or girls don't start getting involved in these things by the time they're about age 11, typically they won't want to touch it again. So we've had kids who come into our programs, older girls who kind of initially, you know, turn their noses up because they're at that age where they haven't been involved in it, and now it's not the cool thing to do to go to the STEM programs, right? So starting young and just not necessarily, you know, force feeding it to your kids or anything like that, but sharing these stories, sharing these things with your kids, having, you know, downloading coding apps on your tablet that most kids already use at home anyway, is just a good way for them to start to explore it and see if it is something that, you know, they are really into or not. This is a new book that we bought, and it's quickly become one of my favorites, called Unplugged. And my favorite thing about this is that this little robot, her name is Blip. So typically when you see robots, you know, it's a masculine, or there's kind of an idea of, you know, this thing is a he. So I really love even just little stories like that of like starting to refer to as like she, or, you know, instead of like, oh, a scientist, he would do this, just starting to change your language a little bit, like, oh, as a scientist, she would do this. Again, it starts to reflect that idea of this isn't necessarily a world that isn't for me, but I also belong in the world of STEM, and I also belong here too. The next one is, these two are fairly similar. Ada Twist Scientist, which I think most people have probably heard of at one point or another, as well as Rosie Revere Engineer are great ones because, again, it's, you know, showing that as an engineer and a scientist, it is a young woman who is reflected there too. And my favorite thing about Ada Twist Scientist, without getting too political here, is that not only is she a young woman, but she is also a young woman of color. So especially for communities who, you know, maybe need some extra representation, it's a really good one. And so what we like to kind of emphasize to parents who come to us and, you know, say that they want their daughters or, you know, their nieces to kind of get exposure to the world of STEM, but they're not sure where to start, is typically to start with one of our programs that involves a little bit more design. So something like 2D or 3D design, something like graphic design or web development. It's still related to the world of STEM, but for young girls who are a little bit hesitant to jump right into coding or jump right into robotics or something that they might still view as a typically male thing, it allows them to kind of come into this space to get exposure to things like code, get exposure to design thinking and sort of things that are involved in the world of STEM, but in a way that's almost like disguised, I guess, but not in a negative way. Yeah, Exactly. One of the sayings that our founder always says that I love is talking about the idea of hiding broccoli in the cake. So for things like app development or web development, or in this case, you know, starting with the more artsy kind of STEM programs, you're hiding the broccoli in the cake. So you're showing them what is possible in something that is interested in for them. And I find typically what happens is that after they start with, you know, something like 2D and 3D design, they see everything that's around here. They see that most of the instructors here are actually women themselves. Again, it's that idea of representation and role models, and they can kind of start to say, oh, okay, you know, that robotics also looks really cool. I think I want to check that out. And they're a little bit more confident to make that leap instead of jumping right in. Don't get me wrong, we have had, you know, girls who just jump right into the coding, who jump right into robotics, and that's fantastic. But not all young girls are like that. I think there are, you know, some young girls who are like Carleigh, who are very willing to just kind of jump in, or like, I like physics, I like math, and go with it. And there are other young girls who are like me, who, you know, kind of hid it away because it wasn't necessarily something that they saw. And one of the best things you can do, I guess, is our sort of final point, is learn with them. So we find that sometimes we have parents who come in, you know, whether they're moms or dads or aunts or uncles, and they don't, you know, you might not necessarily know what coding is. You might not necessarily know what robotics is. And it can be really, really hard to, you know, have a conversation about it and explain what it is if, you know, you don't necessarily know how to do it. And so learning with them can be a really great way. You know, start them off with one of our programs and, you know, something like robotics or 2D design, and have them teach you. And then that way you're kind of learning together, and you're starting to, you know, encourage their interests, and just be like, you like this? Yeah, awesome. Let's see what we can do to get you more involved.
Yeah, I always took comfort that mom or dad was always there looking over my shoulder doing homework, and they were learning with me as well. Like if there was a math question they didn't understand, I would explain it to them. Mom said she gave up when math started looking more like English than actually learning English, but it's a comfort. It's encouraging to have your parents involved in what you're doing.
It does.
It makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And just, again, that idea of confidence too. Like, I know we've had students who come in and are like, let me show you this thing I figured out how to do, or let me, you know, I just saw this awesome thing. Have you heard of this? Have you watched this TV show? And being like, no, tell me more. Like for them to,
you're learning from the students as well.
Exactly.
So and it's a two-way street in STEM usually.
Yeah. And for them to be able to, you know, talk about that and start to kind of build their own community, or like build their own STEM squad, I guess, for lack of a better term. can be very, very empowering for young kids in general, but especially young women. So I guess based on, everything that we talked about within the last 25 minutes, the big takeaways are kind of, getting girls involved in STEM really is a community effort. And it's really that idea of building a community, building a safe space, and encouraging them to pursue their interests, without the kind of fear of bias. If you have a girl who isn't, interested in STEM or expresses it, jump on that bandwagon and kind of, help them get as far as they want to go. We are always more than happy to answer any questions that you have. So if you do have a young woman in your life who is involved in STEM and you want a little bit more information about some of our programs and things, what they can do, by all means, send us an email at info@STEMminds, and we are more than happy to have a conversation and kind of help you guide them in the right direction. And I guess lastly, a good starting point is something like a summer camp too. So a lot of parents will also come to us and say, that they express their young, daughters or whoever express interest in these sort of things, but they don't really know themselves what program to put them in, because they don't know, what app development really entails or what web development really entails. And so starting up, our summer camps are always a little bit more exploratory, so they get hands-on experience in absolutely everything that we have to offer. That's always a really good starting point if you just want to kind of expose them to the world of STEM, because then they get, some hands-on experience with 3D design, they get to do coding, they get to do robotics, and from there can kind of see, what area they want to continue with, and do it with a community of other kind of fearless women in STEM, and kind of be hopefully inspired from there. Carleigh, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we say goodbye to the fun people on the internet?
Just to all the girls who are into STEM, it's time to shine.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Let's do it, ladies. Be the strong female character you can always be, and never be afraid to be who you are. So like always, if you have any questions or comments, whether later on, later on in the day, next week, whatever, please feel free to post them in the comments below. We do monitor them. So even if you're catching it on a replay and you're like, oh, darn, I have a question that I would have liked to ask them, please do post it in the comments, and we are more than happy. We'll go back and kind of answer them or reach out to you. If you want to leave a phone number, we can give you a call. And I will post some of those blog posts and kind of links and things into the comments for you in just a few moments, so that you have a little bit more information on how you can help your girls get more involved in STEM. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Carleigh, for being my co-host this Friday.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, have a lovely weekend, everyone. I think the spring weather is finally supposed to come back, which I hope. For those of you who actually don't know, Carleigh is from Barbados, and so I've been telling her all week, April in Canada is not usually like this, so don't be afraid of the snow. But have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you next Friday for another installment of Fearless Fridays on Facebook Live.
Nice.
Bye for now.